Hello everyone, Jules here. Today I want to talk about an oracle deck that has recently been published. That is the Oracle of the Hekatean Path. And this has been created by Kenn Payne and Butler. So it's recently been published by Scarabeo. Here is the box. And to say that this deck has been long awaited by myself is a huge understatement. I'm just so pleased to finally get my own copy of this deck. I've been very much eagerly awaiting this deck because of the whole theme of this deck, which is about the Goddess Hekate. And I'm going to talk about the deck, and I'm going to talk about some associations that I make with the deck and why this is an important deck for me. I think that this is an important deck in general for the whole genre of oracle cards, but it's also quite important for me because the Goddess Hekate I actually see as something in between an archetype and a deity. Hekate is quite an ethereal night goddess. So maybe that's why I personally see Hekate as in between an archetype and a deity. So this deck has got 60 cards, and here is the guidebook written by Kenn Payne. Kenn Payne is an expert on the Goddess Hekate. I'll put some details below the video about Kenn Payne and Butler. I think they are the two people who were just perfect for creating this deck. I really can't imagine any other people who would be as suited to create this deck. It just shines through the whole work. This guidebook has the cards numbered from 1 to 60, and I think it's great that there are 60 cards. I think a lot of people like that. So they're numbered from 1 to 60. There is a very good introduction, and I love the way that there is the cards numbered from 1 to 60, but also with the keyword. So you have the title of the goddess, which is the Greek title, and then you have the keyword just below the title, which is really helpful. The keyword is very important for people who are learning about the Goddess Hekate. There are two spreads in the front of the book. One is called the Crossroads spread and the Twin Torches spread. So that's great. I really like there is an introduction and some information on how to use the deck. I've heard it said before that some people think that the guidebook is brief, and I think that needs to be expected because it is just the guidebook, the small guidebook with the deck. But I have found the descriptions for all the 60 cards to be really helpful and really useful. I think especially for people who are just having their first encounter with the Goddess Hekate with this deck, I think this is what's required, so that you don't have too much information, so that you're not overwhelmed with that while you're getting acquainted with all of the aspects of the goddess. So I'm quite happy with the guidebook. Now, just as I'm starting, I suppose the best thing I could say about well, for me, about the Goddess Hekate is that I have always associated the Goddess Hekate with the High Priestess card. Very much. You have the crescent moon there, and Hekate is very much the High Priestess, and a silent type of night goddess. So I have always associated Hekate with this card. And the other card is the moon card. I think a lot of people always have a vague kind of connection with this moon card. I think a lot of people even have a little bit of trouble sometimes with divination with this card, sort of just trying to define this card. And strangely enough, for me personally, I have never had much of a problem with the moon card. I have gone through some of my older journals where I have always written about the different card meanings, and the most information that I could write down actually was connected with the moon card. So I was always getting insights about the moon card. But because of the wolf and the moon that's on this card, and it's all about the night and the pathway journey, I have always associated this card with the Goddess Hekate. So I just wanted to say that to begin with, so people could get a bit of a feeling for what type of goddess Hekate is. And also for me personally, it took a number of years to realise that I had a connection with Hekate, because personally I do not identify as a witch, and I know that Hekate is very much goddess of the witches, but I do have and have had a very ongoing interest with magic, and especially with ethereal things and night goddesses. So it took me a while to realise. I had to go through a lot of psychological changes to realise the connection that was actually already there. And it took me a while to recognise that, and I've recognised that very much in recent years. And I'm really glad that I've finally recognised that. And it's gotten me through very difficult times. And I also love that Hekate is very much associated with fringe dwellers and people who are marginalised. I have always been a fringe dweller. I'm not a follower. I'm not someone who runs with the herd at all. So Hekate is very much like that, and is very much there for those types of people. So that also fits with me very, very well. So now to talk about the cards. I'm going to show about a third of the deck because I like most of the cards, but I don't really want to show all of the cards. So just to get started, the cardstock is very good. I love the low Scarabeo cardstock for the oracles. It's always good. Here is the wonderful symbol on the back. And this symbol is actually from a tattoo that Kenn Payne actually has. So I really like that personal association with this symbol. But I really like the symbol on the back of this deck. I just think it's perfect for the deck. So these cards are numbered 1 to 60, and you have the title at the top, which is in this case it's number 4, and you have a keyword at the bottom here. So this is a really beautiful card. I think this card particularly epitomises Hekate. I really like this card. It's quite beautiful. that keyword is dichotomy, because you're seeing the two sides of Hekate there. And I think it's also showing, for me, it shows the universal association. This looks like a universal goddess, and that's what Hekate is. There's so many aspects to Hekate, and this deck will help people with that who are interested. This is number 5. This is titled Gorgo, and the keyword is fear. And I think this is a great, very typical association with Hekate as well, because if we have fears of different kinds, or even subconscious fears that we're not quite aware of, Hekate is very much the goddess to help with that. So I think this is a great image. And I am a fan of Chris Butler's art. I have about 4 of his decks. This is the 5th one now. So I really do think his artwork is perfect for a deck about Hekate. So that's Gorgo, and that's fear. Love this one. This is nature. I think this deck is also a great way to learn about all of the titles of Hekate and the Greek words for those. I think it's great to learn about that. This is a great nature card. I think it's perfect. I mean, you can feel not only the nature theme, but the instinctual feel of the card. It's great. I love that card. This is a card that is very much, this is guardian. Hekate is very much a guardian. Hekate is all about boundaries. I also see this as a card representing transition too. That's just for me personally. I love this card. It's boundaries. Excuse me, guardian. Guardian for that one. This is really, really good. Guidance. This is exactly another, yet again, very much what Hekate is about. Guidance when finding your way through the psychological darkness, or even just finding your way through a problem that just seems like you just can't find a solution for. I have very much experienced this, not only in recent times, but over the last few years. It's a great card. That one's guidance. Here is another one. Unlocking. Unlocking. A lot of people know that Hekate is associated with keys. I could just stare at these cards for so long. I'm mesmerised by these images. It's unlocking. Another beautiful, beautiful card. Psychopomp and Soul Guide is the title. Hekate is very much a psychopomp, which means soul guide. I think of Hekate quite a lot in this way. I know I'm going to say the word beautiful a lot. I really don't know what other word to say. But The images are really quite stunning, quite unique. Oh, great. Also, this says transition, very much. Hecate's very much about transition. I personally have been going through quite a psychological transition. It's actually lasted the last few years and actually got quite deep and intense, and I'm just so glad that it was ultimately healing for me, but without finding my connection to Hekate, and whether people see that as an archetype or deity or something in between like I do, that doesn't really matter. So that's the transition card for the Psychopomp. This is Nectaria of the Night. So this is the Goddess of the Night, and this is Secrets. So Hekate has her own secrets to divulge, which can take a lot of time to find out the hidden meaning for you personally. So secrets is a very good keyword. That's probably one of the most beautiful cards of the deck. Now, this is Sovereignty, and this is Queen of Witches. This is the usual association that a lot of people make. I mean, this is a very natural association with Hekate. Even the word Heka is the Egyptian word for magic. So I can quite understand why Hekate is normally associated with magic or witches. I can quite understand that, but there is so much more to Hekate as a very universal goddess with many aspects. And I love the key word of sovereignty for that. You know, being empowered and standing in your own power. Hekate is something that teaches lessons about empowerment, your own self-empowerment. Now, this one is dedication, and this is devotee. I really like this. I see this deck, I mean, it can be used in a practical sense as an oracle, but I see this more as a devotee type of deck for people who would like to learn about and make a connection with Hekate. So I really do think of this as a devotee kind of deck, because Kenn Payne very much is a devotee of Hekate. It's a beautiful card. The new moon, which is beginnings. The dark of the moon and the new moon, I see, is very much associated with Hekate. You have a very fine slither of moon. And here is the dark moon with the keyword release. I think this very much signifies one of the main associations with Hekate. Very much to do with release. Here is the hound, the black hound, and loyalty. Loyalty is the key word. I've always quite loved wolves, and I mean, I think when I think back over many years, there have been little signs and symbols that I haven't really taken very much notice of. But in more recent years, all these things make sense for me. So I really like this one for the Black Hound, which is loyalty. Severance for the dagger. Hekate is also about this as well. Knowing when to sever things that no longer have any use or meaning. Different stages in your life. Having to be firm about that. Having to be final about that. It's a great card. These cards have I would call a semi-gloss finish. And I think that's good for these cards because for me, it just seems right. I wouldn't be able to get as much beauty from these cards if they were matte. I don't think fully matte would not work with this deck. This is the Axis Mundi, and this is Crux. You know, the point in the center where the lines meet. And this is like a keyhole image. It's really the meeting place where all the lines join together. And of course you have to have Hecate's wheel for cycles. Really like this card. Another favourite. This is the Death card, and this is Aconite. Really beautiful card. And I've had quite an attraction or interest in Aconite in recent times too. You know, as I was saying, there's been several symbols and things that I just wasn't able to sort of connect them up, but now it's just really quite obvious. This is Kore, the other name is Persephone. And this is Growth, the goddess Persephone. It's also part of the Hekate myth, the Hekate story. A lot of people think of Persephone and Demeter mainly in the well-known common myth, but Hekate was involved in that story as well. So another beautiful card. And Artemis, Independence. There's a really interesting connection with Hekate and Artemis. I have always had a bit of a fascination with Artemis over many years. And for a long time, there has been an unknown connection, well, not very well known connection, between the goddess Artemis and Hekate. A lot of people confuse Artemis with Venus, and they're not the same goddess. Artemis is very much about nature and independence, a fierce kind of independence. So I really like the fact that this is included in the deck. Really, really like this. Beautiful card. Now, this is an association a lot of people think of. This is the Restless Dead, an unresolved past. this kind of theme has been quite on my mind, probably very much, particularly for the last year or so, particularly. This is something else that is usually associated with Hekate as well. The unresolved past and the restless dead. The last card I'm showing for today is number 58, and there are 60 cards in the deck. This is protection. This is the Holy Daemon card. This is from the lower realm. And the whole theme of protection, Hekate is very much about that too. It's like boundaries for your own good, that kind of protection. So I think this is a great card for me today to finish with. So there's some of the cards of the Oracle of the Hekatean Path. Now, just before I go, I want to remind people that there is a great series on Chris Butler's YouTube channel. It's a 12-part series of showing the cards, talking about the images, about the ideas and the concepts behind the creation of the images, and these are videos with Kenn Payne as well. And in the most recent video, which was part 12, Kenn Payne and Chris Butler were talking about how to use the cards, some ideas about using the cards, and that's a great video to watch, people who are interested. Now, Chris Butler talks about one of the ideas he has is using his Healing Light Tarot. This is one of my favourite decks, and this does work well with the deck, and Chris Butler was talking about using this deck for finding a clarifying card when it's required. If you'd like to use this deck for further clarification, just to have a clarifying card with the Oracle. So this is a really wonderful deck. This is the Healing Light Tarot. This is one of my favourite decks. So for me, I don't have anything else like this deck. My connection with this deck is not like any other deck that I've got. I really, really love this deck. It's just a whole different experience in itself. But for me, I'm going to add an idea that for me, this works really well. I like to use the Healing Light Lenormand with this deck, especially when with the Lenormand deck you even have a key, you even have a card, you have a card for the key, but there's lots of other cards that I find relevant as well. This works really well for me, the Healing Light Lenormand, with this Oracle of the Hekatean Path or Hekatean Path. So that's just an idea of mine. I'm using the Healing Light Lenormand sometimes with this deck. So I'm going to put some details below the video. I probably have not said enough about the creators and about the deck itself, but I can thoroughly recommend this deck. It's for people who would like to know more about the Goddess Hekate. If you would like to also connect more with the Goddess Hekate, learn all the different aspects of the goddess. If you are also a fan of Chris Butler's art, which I am. And I'm also glad that I also discovered Kenn Payne's channel as well. Kenn Payne has his own channel, and it's all about his connection and his being part of his Hekate group. I'm pretty sure it's called Covenant of Hekate, but I will put details about that as well. But I'm really glad that I actually discovered Kenn Payne as well with this deck, because because of the videos that are on Chris Butler's channel, and I think generally speaking I usually just buy these decks by Chris Butler because of Chris Butler's art, because I love the decks, but it's also really great to discover the creator of this deck as well, which is Kenn Payne. So I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the cards. I showed about a third of the deck, and I will put some details below the video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.